Mazel tov, boys. Let's freaking go. Guys, it's Tiqqle, and in this video, we're going over my run of Torghast on an Elemental Shaman. We snuck in during the time when there was a bug that allowed you to get into the tower. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to thank you guys for participating in the giveaways we've done for the past week. We gave over 25 copies of Shadowlands out to the community, so thank you guys for making that possible. Many of the copies were given out by the chat and Twitch chat. So number one, guys, Elemental was not allowed to go into the tower. The way this worked was there was actually a bug where if you had a DH or someone that could go into the tower queue and then invite you to the group, you could go around the mechanic that restricted certain classes. And some classes I was able to do an enhanced shaman run and some other runs, but a lot of those classes didn't even have anima powers available. Elemental Shaman did, which means that they were either incorrectly loaded or they forgot about them or what have you. What ended up happening is Blizzard came out and said, hey, that was a bug, and they actually have patched it since to stop that bug from working. But they did mention that Elemental Shaman specifically, that build and the anima powers used in the tower was from about a year ago. So that is an old build. But what's interesting is what they did include. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over that. And as you guys know, the tower is a new thing that's going to be in Shadowlands. It's going to be used for farming legendary components, which is what it's called now. That will be used for crafting legendaries. That system is not totally flushed out from what's in the alpha so far, but that's what it's about. It is a 1 to 5 party event. You're able to go in and go from a certain level ranges of the floors. The floors get harder as you go up, and as you go, you'll get anima powers, to just give you an overview. Now, let's just agree that the way the tower is intended to work, and the reason I'm going to show you all my different powers individually, and you can pause the stream if you want to see what each of them are, is it's supposed to be hard at the beginning. And then as you start to create a build out of the anima powers that you're getting, you start to get 50, 60 anima powers, and that allows you to crush things. Usually the scaling of it is such that you start the towers and the first 10 floors are maybe challenging or difficult to fight the elites or rares. After that, you start to become a freight train, or at least you should, based on some of the builds I've seen for some classes. So as you kind of watch this video, I basically put in some of the first few levels of the tower, and this is a normal run, not a heroic run. But you're able to see things like, the increased stats wherever they have not implemented a anima power, the on hit of a new enemy, you heal yourself. I'm a big fan of that one. But you're also able to see the shaman specific ones for Elemental. Elemental had things like increases lightning bolt, chain lightning damage, and nature damage in general. They had abilities like your fire damage increases the damage taken by the target up to 99 stacks of 3%, which means it's like almost 300% additional damage. They had things like, and a lot of things around Earthquake. Earthquake was the core kind of feature for Elemental Shamans. A lot of different classes have a lot of different kind of like perceived abilities and perceived builds. Like, for example, priests have a perceived, and what I'm saying is a perceived build is basically Blizzard put a lot of anima powers in there focusing on those specific abilities or those specific play styles for classes. For example, priests have a lot of increased damage of mind control. Warlocks have a lot of increased pet health and pet damage. And Ellie has a lot of stuff around Earthquake. So I do appreciate that. It was actually kind of interesting, especially because of the changes to Earthquake, not having a cooldown, not having a cost. It just has kind of a long cast time unless you build up the procs. Now, one of the most interesting anima abilities we came across was one that was the following. It gave you a permanent fire elemental, but it made it so you could not use frost abilities, meaning mainly for me, Frost Shock and water walking, apparently. But yeah, so that permanent Ellie was actually a really cool feature and actually was pretty exciting. I mean, you take the loss of no frost, but who cares? You have a permanent fire elemental. People have talked about this for a long time, having something like this in terms of a potential pet class. People have mixed feelings about that. Put it down in the comments. But it was definitely it was like a rare epic anima, so it was pretty cool. There's a lot of anima powers that gave you talent, secondary talents on a certain row. There was buffs to other abilities like your earth, your nature spells, your earth shock, your earthquakes. So all of that kind of stacking that damage, which I was going. But what it really came to was earthquake. That's what I kind of was gravitating towards. There was also some other ones that had to do with where whenever you earth shocked, you got a Lava Surge proc. So certain interactions between different skills, which I thought was very cool. So the build that I went pretty much in general was Earthquake centric, and I also went increased fire damage. So I had a permanent fire elemental. I had anytime I did a fire damage, including my pet's damage, it would put up that stacking debuff to make the mob take more damage. And then I also basically stacked anything that increased damage of Lightning Bolt, Earth Shock, but mainly Earthquake, increasing the duration. I got one that slowed enemies when they're hit by Earthquake. That was pretty cool. I also, of course, took all the default things about haste, about, you know, anything from the rare mobs that was a pretty cool thing. Obviously, it wasn't complete because we did still see a lot of the chickens. The chickens, whenever you saw those, it meant that it wasn't implemented yet. So, but definitely around Earthquake, and I would say the climax of the build was when I got the certain anima power that said anytime I place a totem, I get an Earthquake at that position. So that means Tremor Totem, Earthbind Totem, Cap Totem, Searing Totem, Healing Stream Totem. All these totems you're able to stack up, and those dropped Earthquakes on Earthquakes, and they're very buffed Earthquakes. There's also one that was Earthquake. You get a Chain Lightning. So all of these were kind of working together, and I'll show you, you know, a lot of the run is not included here. The runs do take a long time, especially if you're kind of taking your time. And so I will skip the middle levels. Basically, I'm showing you the first few, which were tough. And for Elemental, honestly, it was not as tough as other classes. Elemental was relatively easy, especially because you can wait for cooldowns. You can wait, you know, around Earth Ellie in case you want a defensive that is going to save your life. But I will also show you as the build kind of matured, how it started to look. And that's what the tower's all about, is getting those builds together and starting to have fun and crushing some mobs and making some quicker progression and progress, which is definitely was a very cool. And you'll see it, the number of earthquakes you'll start to see me use is just excessive. But it was a very good time. I have to say Elemental was one of the more interesting classes to play. But again, this build is not necessarily going to be the one that is going to be in live. Blizzard has said that this version may not resemble what is going to be in there. So with that being said, the key here is okay, well, if it's not going to be there, what was it and what was good about it? What was bad about it? Well, I'll say this. What I thought was good was that there was definitely a clear path to a great build in the tower for Elemental Shaman. Buffing up your Earthquake was definitely the key. A lot of things working together with that. I thought that there wasn't necessarily other paths that you could take. There was, you know, some buffs to your Earthshock, which also buffed Earthquake, some buffs to your Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, but in general, it wasn't necessarily changing your playstyle or altering how strong. Well, I mean, obviously, it was buffing you up, but it wasn't changing kind of how you played or did your rotation as you kind of just did your thing, unless you went for the Earthquake. And if you went for the Earthquake, you're basically spamming Earthquake. Now, that is fun. I like it. It was cool. Definitely different, especially once you got the totems to start dropping Earthquakes. But in reality, I would like to see some other paths, some other ways that there could be, you know, that you could, other builds that you could go, like maybe there's a nature build, there's an earthquake build, and there's a fire build, or maybe there's even a frost build. Frost Shock does something, you know, really cool, you know, something that could change those up. The other thing I noticed was that there wasn't a whole lot of use of Stormkeeper or some of the cooldown abilities, which I was a little surprised to see, but maybe they don't want to be tied to too many talents. So I would think that Blizzard, I hope, in the next iteration, not only has Earthquake as being the core, but has some other options and other builds that could be viable. It definitely seemed like, of course, you're increasing your damage, but it would be cool to see those interactions play out. Like I said, the Earthshock to Lava Burst, or Lava Surge proc, which is instant cast Lava Burst, was definitely fun. And that was what the point where I was like, oh, wow, this could be really cool. And then maybe Lava bursting a target with Flame Shock on it did something different. Or, you know, something with your Searing Totems beyond just spawning a damaged pool. You know, having maybe totems do different things, like every time you drop a totem, it causes a Chain Lightning or something like that. Something a little bit different other than just Earthquake, because I definitely feel like that was the clear winner in terms of strongest builds. And if your RNG is, you know, not there and you don't get those Earthquakes, it could put you at a severe disadvantage, because going into the heroic level, what you're able to see very quickly is you better get some quick animas that are very strong. Otherwise, you're going to struggle a lot. So that's just something else that I think Blizzard needs to take into account, is that, you know, it would be the best, and replay factor would go way up if there was different paths and different builds. Obviously, each class kind of has an indicated, you know, build, like I said, priests with mind control, warlocks with pets, warriors with, you know, self-healing and fury. That's just what I think. I mean, I would like to hear what you guys think, what abilities you would like to see in the Elemental Shaman Tower, and maybe I'll make a video based on the comments to be able to go through them and kind of talk about them a little bit, and even put on the forums. But that's what I think. I think, you know, the fact that this is a year-old build is good to know. I'm glad Blizzard did say that, and maybe things are totally different. But I will have to say, I will never forget the time I ran the tower and I had 11 earthquakes under my feet based on the totems. So, you know, kind of a good and bad, a pro and the cons for the tower on Ellie so far. It really was one of the easier runs that I've done, especially as I ramped up very quickly. But that's what I think about that. So that was the tower. I'll link down again to the VOD down below. Remember, guys, we do have a transmog competition coming up this weekend on the 2nd of May. We're going to start doing transmog competitions every month. We're going to start doing them Horde and Alliance, and we're going to start doing giveaways every month. So I appreciate all the love, everybody, and we will see you in the next video or on the next stream every day, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, except for some Sundays. And with that being said, guys, we'll see you in the next one.